The Seeding by Sylvester Scoforoo. Chapter 1. The Discovery. The dredge's massive cutter head bit into the ancient mud of Mobile Bay with a grinding roar that Captain Rick Hernandez had heard 1,000 times before. But the sound that came next, a metallic screech that set his teeth on edge, that was new. "Cut power!" He shouted into his radio, but the operator in the control cabin had already killed the engines. The Gulf Titan, all 250 feet of her, shuddered to a halt. Rick leaned over the starboard rail, squinting against the late afternoon sun that turned the bay's murky water into liquid copper. They were working the main shipping channel, deepening it to accommodate the new generation of container ships. Standard work. Boring work. Until 30 seconds ago. What the hell was that? Tommy Nguyen, his first mate, appeared at his elbow, wiping grease from his hands with a red rag. "Don't know. Felt like we hit something solid." Rick pulled out his phone and checked their position. "We're in 60 feet of water here. Charts show nothing but mud and silt." The radio crackled. "Captain, this is Martinez in the control room." The cutter heads jammed. "I'm reading massive resistance. Whatever we hit, it's not moving." Rick exchanged a glance with Tommy. In 20 years of dredging Mobile Bay, he'd pulled up Civil War cannons, sunken barges, even a 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air. But those things gave way eventually. This felt different. "Send down the ROV," Rick ordered. "Let's see what we're dealing with." 20 minutes later, Rick stood in the cramped control room, staring at the monitor as the remotely operated vehicle descended through the murky water. The feed showed nothing but brown soup until the ROV's lights hit bottom. "Jesus Christ," Tommy whispered. The cutter head had bitten into something that gleamed dully in the ROV's lights. Not rock. Not a sunken ship. The surface was smooth, almost polished, and extended in every direction beyond the reach of the lights. "Is that metal?" Martinez asked, his voice uncertain. Rick didn't answer. He was too busy watching as the ROV operator panned the camera across the surface. The object, whatever it was, seemed to curve slightly, like the hull of an impossibly large vessel. "How big is this thing?" Tommy asked. "Move the ROV east," Rick ordered. "Let's find an edge." The ROV glided through the water, its lights playing across the metallic surface. 10 feet. 20. 50. 100. The object just kept going. "Try north," Rick said, his mouth suddenly dry. Same result. The thing was massive. "Captain," Martinez said slowly, "I think we need to call this in." Rick nodded, unable to take his eyes off the monitor. Yeah, we do." He pulled out his phone and dialed the number for the Mobile district of the Army Corps of Engineers. As it rang, he couldn't shake the feeling that they'd just stumbled onto something that was going to change everything. Dr. Sarachin was having a late lunch at her desk in the Corps of Engineers office when her phone rang. She almost didn't answer. She was in the middle of reviewing environmental impact statements and had a headache that felt like someone was using her skull as a drum. "Chin," she said, wedging the phone between her ear and shoulder while she continued typing. "Dr. Chen, this is Rick Hernandez, captain of the Gulf Titan. We're working the main channel and we've hit something. Something big." Sarah stopped typing. Rick was one of the most experienced dredge operators on the Gulf Coast. He didn't call unless it was serious. "How big?" "We can't find the edges. We've surveyed a 100-foot radius and it just keeps going. It's metal, or something like metal. Smooth. Definitely not natural." Sarah felt a cold trickle of unease run down her spine. "Send me your coordinates." "I'm coming out." An hour later, she was on the Corps' survey boat, watching the same ROV footage that had stunned Rick's crew. But she had access to better equipment, side-scan sonar, magnetometers, sub-bottom profilers. The results made no sense. "This can't be right," she muttered, staring at her laptop screen. "What can't be right?" asked Lieutenant Commander James Walsh, the Coast Guard liaison who'd insisted on accompanying her. The sonar is showing an object approximately 800 feet long, 300 feet wide, and 200 feet tall. It's buried under 40 feet of sediment, which means it's been here for. She did quick calculations in her head. Centuries. Maybe longer. Walsh leaned over her shoulder. Could it be a sunken ship? Maybe something from World War II? No ship from World War II was 800 feet long. And look at this. She pointed to the magnetometer readings. The magnetic signature is off the charts. This thing is made of something with properties I've never seen before. So what is it? Sarah looked up at him, and for the first time in her career, she had no answer. I don't know. But I think we need to call Washington. By midnight, Mobile Bay was crawling with military vessels. Rick watched from the deck of the Gulf Titan, which had been ordered to remain on station. Coast Guard cutters formed a perimeter around the site. A Navy destroyer sat at anchor a mile away, its radar spinning endlessly. And helicopters, so many helicopters, crisscrossed the sky, their searchlights turning night into day. This is insane, Tommy said, standing beside him. What do they think it is? A Russian submarine? Rick shook his head. Wrong shape. Wrong size. Wrong everything. A rigid-hull inflatable boat approached the Gulf Titan, carrying a dozen men in black tactical gear. They boarded without asking permission, and their leader, a hard-faced man with Colonel's eagles on his collar, walked straight up to Rick. Captain Hernandez? I'm Colonel Marcus Webb, U.S. Army. As of now, this vessel and your crew are under military authority. You will not communicate with anyone off this ship. You will not discuss what you found. Is that clear? Rick bristled. Now wait just a. Is that clear? Webb repeated, his voice like iron. Rick looked at the armed soldiers fanning out across his deck and swallowed his protest. Clear. Good. We're bringing in a dive team. You and your crew will provide any assistance they require. As Webb walked away, Tommy leaned close to Rick. What the hell is going on? I don't know, Rick whispered back. But whatever's down there, the government is scared to death of it. Mobile Bay Incidents. Chapter 2. Discovery Hidden. The dive team arrived at 0400 hours, just as false dawn was painting the eastern sky pink and gold. They came in a massive Chinook helicopter that settled onto a barge the Navy had towed into position during the night. Rick watched as they unloaded equipment he'd never seen before, rebreathers that looked like they belonged in a science fiction movie, lights powerful enough to illuminate a football stadium, and cutting tools that hummed with barely contained energy. The team leader was a woman, which surprised him. She was tall, maybe 5'10", with dark skin and close-cropped hair. She moved with the confidence of someone who'd spent more time underwater than on land. Captain Hernandez? She extended a gloved hand. Master Chief Petty Officer Denise Williams, Navy Deep Sea Diving Unit. We're going down to take a look at your discovery. It's not my discovery, Rick said. I just ran into it. Williams smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Lucky you. We need you to position your vessel directly over the impact site. We're going to use your crane as a descent line. You're going down in the dark? We've got lights. And frankly, Captain, I don't think daylight is going to make much difference 60 feet down in Mobile Bay. She was right about that. Rick had dived the bay himself years ago. Visibility was measured in inches, not feet. He watched as Williams and her team geared up. They moved with practiced efficiency, checking each other's equipment, testing communications, going through pre-dive protocols that looked more complex than launching a space shuttle. Dive team, this is topside, a voice crackled over the loudspeaker. You are go for descent. Williams gave a thumbs up and stepped off the platform into the dark water. Her team followed, one by one, until all 6 divers had disappeared beneath the surface. Rick moved to the control room where video feeds from the divers' helmet cameras were being displayed on a bank of monitors. Colonel Webb stood there, arms crossed, watching intently. He didn't acknowledge Rick's presence. The descent seemed to take forever. The feeds showed nothing but murky water and the occasional fish darting through the divers' lights. Then, suddenly, the bottom came into view. And there it was. Even through the murky water and the limited field of view of the helmet cameras, the object was breathtaking. The surface wasn't just smooth, it was perfect. No corrosion. No marine growth. No imperfections at all. Topside, this is Williams. Her voice came through crystal clear despite being 60 feet underwater. We have visual contact. Beginning survey. The divers spread out, their lights playing across the surface. Williams approached the area where the dredge had struck, running her gloved hand across the metal. Topside, the surface is completely smooth. No seams, no rivets, no welds that I can see. It's like it was cast as a single piece. Can you determine composition? Webb asked. Negative. We'll need to take samples. But I can tell you this isn't steel. It's not aluminum. It's not any alloy I'm familiar with. Rick felt his pulse quicken. What the hell had they found? Williams, move to the northern edge, Webb ordered. We need to establish the object's full dimensions. The dive team swam north, their lights creating an eerie underwater ballet. They covered 50 feet, then 100, then 200. The object just kept going. Topside, we've reached what appears to be a corner, Williams reported. The object curves here, heading west. Recommend we follow the perimeter. Proceed, Webb said. For the next hour, Rick watched as the dive team mapped the object's outline. It was enormous, far larger than the initial sonar surveys had suggested. And as they worked their way around the perimeter, Williams made another discovery. Topside, we found something. Looks like an opening. Or maybe a seam. Hard to tell with all the sediment. Can you clear it? Webb leaned forward, his knuckles white as he gripped the edge of the console. We can try. The camera feed showed Williams using a high-pressure water jet to blast away centuries of accumulated mud. Slowly, a shape emerged, a rectangular outline, perfectly straight, about 10 feet tall and 6 feet wide. Jesus, someone whispered behind Rick. That's a door. Williams ran her hand along the edge of the rectangle. Topside, this is definitely an entrance of some kind. The seam is too perfect to be natural. And look at this. She directed her light to the right side of the rectangle, where a series of symbols were etched into the metal. They weren't letters, at least not any alphabet Rick recognized. They were geometric shapes, interlocking in patterns that seemed almost mathematical. Are you getting this? Williams asked. We're recording everything, Webb confirmed. Can you open it? Not without heavy equipment. This thing has been sealed for a long time. We'd need cutting torches, hydraulic jacks, maybe even explosives. Negative on the explosives, Webb said quickly. We don't know what's inside. Could be structural damage, could be hazardous materials. We do this carefully. Understood. Recommend we surface and develop a plan. Agreed. Bring your team up. As the divers began their ascent, Rick turned to Webb. Colonel, what is that thing? Webb didn't take his eyes off the monitors. That's above your pay grade, Captain. It's in my bay. I think I have a right to know. Webb finally looked at him, and Rick saw something in the colonel's eyes that made his blood run cold. Fear. Captain Hernandez, in about 6 hours, this entire area is going to be locked down tighter than Fort Knox. The people of Mobile are going to wake up to find their city under military occupation. And when they ask why, we're going to tell them it's a training exercise. Do you understand what I'm saying? Rick understood perfectly. Whatever was down there, the government was going to bury it under layers of secrecy and lies. What if someone already knows? Rick asked. What if someone saw the dredge stop? What if someone's been watching the military build up? Webb's expression hardened. Then we'll deal with them too. Chapter 3. The Mobile Incident. The gathering of the scientist Jennifer Martinez had been a reporter for Channel 10 for 8 years, and she knew when something big was happening. The military buildup in Mobile Bay wasn't a training exercise. Training exercises didn't involve destroyers and helicopter gunships. Training exercises didn't happen in the middle of a major shipping channel. And training exercises sure as hell didn't start at midnight. She'd been at home, unable to sleep, scrolling through social media when she saw the first posts. Pictures of helicopters over the bay. Videos of Coast Guard vessels forming a perimeter. Speculation running wild. By 0200 hours, she was in her car, heading for the waterfront. The military had set up checkpoints on every road leading to the bay. Jennifer parked 3 blocks away and approached on foot, her press credentials in hand and her phone recording video in her jacket pocket. "Sorry, ma'am, this area is restricted," a young soldier told her at the checkpoint. "I'm with Channel 10 News." "What's going on?" "Training exercise, ma'am. For your safety, we need you to turn around." "A training exercise at 2 in the morning? In the middle of the shipping channel?" The soldier's expression didn't change. "Ma'am, I need you to turn around. Now." Jennifer knew when to push and when to retreat. She turned around, but she didn't go home. Instead, she drove to the office of the Mobile Register, where she knew the night editor, Tom Brennan, would still be working. Tom was a dinosaur, 65 years old, chain-smoking despite the building's no-smoking policy, and convinced that the internet was destroying journalism. But he had sources everywhere and a nose for bullshit that was legendary. "Jenny!" he called out when she walked into the newsroom. "What brings you to print media at this ungodly hour?" "Something's happening in the bay, Tom. Something big. The military has locked down the entire waterfront." Tom leaned back in his chair, which creaked ominously. "Yeah, I heard. Training exercise." "You believe that?" "Hell no. I've been making calls. Nobody knows anything, which means somebody knows everything and isn't talking." Jennifer pulled out her phone and showed him the videos she captured. "Look at this. That's a Navy destroyer. Those are Black Hawk helicopters. This isn't a training exercise." Tom studied the footage, his eyes narrowing. "You know what this reminds me of? Back in '93, when that Russian submarine got stuck on a sandbar off Dauphin Island. The Navy locked down the whole area, told everyone it was a navigation exercise. Took them 3 days to refloat it, and the whole time they pretended nothing was happening. You think there's a submarine down there? I think there's something down there. And I think we need to find out what." He stubbed out his cigarette and reached for his phone. "I'm calling an old friend. Guy I know who works for the Corps of Engineers. If anyone knows what's really going on, it's him." While Tom made his call, Jennifer scrolled through social media. The posts were multiplying. People were scared, confused, angry. The official story wasn't holding up. Tom hung up and looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "My guy says the Gulf Titan hit something yesterday afternoon. Something big. The Corps sent Dr. Sarachin out to investigate, and within hours, the military took over." "What did they hit?" "He doesn't know. But he said Chin looked shaken when she came back. Said she made a call to Washington and then everything went dark." Jennifer felt her reporter's instincts kick into high gear. "We need to talk to Chin." "Good luck with that. She's probably in a bunker somewhere being debriefed by men in black suits." Then we talked to the dredge crew. They were there. They saw it first. Tom smiled, and it was the smile of a predator who'd just spotted prey. "Now you're thinking like a journalist. But be careful, Jenny. If the military is this serious about keeping this quiet, they're not going to appreciate us poking around. Since when has that stopped us? Never. Which is why I love this job." He stood up, grabbing his jacket. "Come on. I know where the Gulf Titan usually docks. Let's see if we can find someone willing to talk." By dawn, Mobile was waking up to a new reality. Military vehicles rolled through the streets, their loudspeakers blaring the same message on repeat: "Attention, citizens of Mobile. The U.S. military is conducting a training exercise in the Bay Area. For your safety, please avoid the waterfront. This is a routine exercise. There is no cause for alarm. Repeat, this is a routine training exercise. But the people of Mobile weren't buying it. Traffic jams clogged the streets as people tried to get to the waterfront to see what was happening. Schools were closed. Businesses near the bay were ordered to evacuate. And the local news stations were going crazy trying to get information to AT Channel 10. Jennifer's news director, Marcus Webb, no relation to the colonel, was fielding calls from the network, the FCC, and what sounded like half the Pentagon. "I don't care what they're telling you," he shouted into his phone. "We have a right to report the news. This is still America, last time I checked." He slammed the phone down and looked at Jennifer, who just walked into his office. "They're threatening to pull our broadcast license if we spread panic and misinformation. Can you believe that? What are we going to do?" Marcus ran a hand through his thinning hair. "We're going to do our jobs. But carefully. Very carefully. What have you got?" Jennifer told him about her conversation with Tom Brennan and their unsuccessful attempt to find the Gulf Titan's crew. "The dredge is still out in the bay, under military guard. We can't get near it." "What about the Corps of Engineers?" "This Dr. Chen?" Not answering her phone. "Her office says she's on extended leave." Marcus swore under his breath. "Okay, here's what we're going to do. We report what we know, military presence in the bay, official story is a training exercise, but sources suggest something was discovered during dredging operations. We don't speculate. We don't make accusations. We just report the facts. That's not going to satisfy anyone. No, but it'll keep us on the air. And as long as we're on the air, we can keep digging." He looked at her seriously. "Jenny, I've been in this business for 30 years. I've never seen anything like this. Whatever they found out there, it's big enough to scare the hell out of the federal government. We need to be smart about this." Jennifer nodded, but her mind was already racing ahead. There had to be someone willing to talk. There always was. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Hello? Is this Jennifer Martinez?" The voice was male, nervous, speaking barely above a whisper. "Yes. Who is this?" "I can't give you my name. But I was on the Gulf Titan yesterday. I saw what we hit." Jennifer's heart rate spiked. She grabbed a pen. "I'm listening." "Not over the phone. Meet me at the Battleship Park in 1 hour. Come alone. And make sure you're not followed." The line went dead. Jennifer looked at Marcus, who'd been watching her intently. "I've got a source. He was on the dredge. Could be a trap. Could be our only chance to find out what's really going on." Marcus considered for a moment, then nodded. "Take a cameraman. Stay in public. And for God's sake, be careful." The Mobile Incident. Chapter 4. Extraterrestrial. The USS Alabama sat in her permanent berth at Battleship Park, a monument to American naval power and a popular tourist attraction. At 0800 on a Tuesday morning, the park was nearly empty, just a few early visitors and a school group that wouldn't arrive for another hour. Jennifer stood on the pier, looking out at Mobile Bay. From here, she could see the military vessels in the distance, forming a perimeter around something she couldn't see. Helicopters continued their endless patrols. "Ms. Martinez?" She turned to find a young man, maybe 25, with nervous eyes and hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets. He kept glancing around as if expecting soldiers to jump out from behind the battleship. "I'm Jennifer." "You called me?" "Tommy. Tommy Nguyen. I'm first mate on the Gulf Titan." He moved closer, lowering his voice. "I shouldn't be here. They told us not to talk to anyone. But people need to know what's happening. What did you find out there, Tommy?" He pulled out his phone and showed her a video. The footage was shaky, clearly shot in secret, but it showed the ROV feed from yesterday afternoon. The smooth metallic surface. The impossible size. The door with its strange symbols. Jesus, Jennifer whispered. What is that? We don't know. But it's not from here. It can't be. Nothing we've ever built looks like that. Are you saying it's? I'm not saying anything. I'm just showing you what we found. Tommy glanced around again. The military brought in a dive team last night. They found an entrance. They're planning to open it. When? I don't know. Soon. They're bringing in equipment, specialists. This morning, I heard Colonel Webb talking about containment protocols and potential biological hazards. Ms. Martinez, they're scared. Really scared. Jennifer's mind was racing. This was bigger than she'd imagined. Can you send me that video? No. If they trace it back to me, I'm done. But you can film it off my screen. She pulled out her phone and recorded the footage, making sure to capture every detail. Tommy, thank you. This is incredibly brave. It's not brave. It's necessary. He pocketed his phone. People have a right to know. Whatever's down there, it's going to change everything. What do you mean? But Tommy was already walking away, moving quickly toward the parking lot. Jennifer watched him go, then looked down at her phone. The video was grainy, but it was clear enough. She had proof. By noon, the story had exploded. Channel 10 led with Jennifer's report. Military lockdown continues as questions mount about discovery in Mobile Bay. They showed the footage Tommy had provided, carefully edited to protect his identity. They interviewed local residents, business owners, and a marine archaeologist from the University of South Alabama who said the object doesn't match any known shipwreck or geological formation. Within an hour, the story had been picked up by CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, and every major news outlet in the country. Social media went into overdrive. Conspiracy theories multiplied like bacteria. And in Washington, D.C., phones started ringing. President Elizabeth Hartman was in the Oval Office, reviewing the latest economic reports, when her chief of staff, Robert Chen, burst through the door without knocking. Madam President, we have a situation. Elizabeth looked up, immediately alert. Robert never burst into rooms. What kind of situation? Mobile, Alabama. The object we found in the bay. It's all over the news. I thought we had that contained. We did. Until someone leaked footage to a local reporter. Now it's everywhere. He turned on the television mounted on the wall. Elizabeth watched the news coverage, her expression growing darker by the second. The footage was damning, clearly showing something that couldn't be explained away as a sunken ship or natural formation. How bad is this? She asked. Bad. The phones are ringing off the hook. Congress wants answers. The UN is asking questions. And the public is demanding to know what we found. Elizabeth stood and walked to the window, looking out at the rose garden. She'd been president for 3 years, had dealt with economic crises, international conflicts, and natural disasters. But this? This was unprecedented. What do we know about the object? Not much. It's massive, roughly the size of a cruise ship. Made of an unknown alloy. Buried under 40 feet of sediment, which suggests it's been there for centuries, possibly longer. And there's an entrance. Have we opened it? Not yet. The team on site is being cautious. They don't know what's inside. Elizabeth turned back to face him. I want a full briefing. Get me the Secretary of Defense, the Director of National Intelligence, and the head of NASA. And Robert? Get me the best scientists we have. If we're going to open that thing, I want to know what we're dealing with. Already in progress, Madam President. We're reaching out to experts in multiple fields: archaeology, xenobiology, astrophysics, engineering. We're calling it Project Seeding. Why seeding? Because if that thing is what we think it is, it might explain how we got here. Elizabeth felt a chill run down her spine. You think it's extraterrestrial? I think we need to be prepared for that possibility. She nodded slowly. Okay. Set up the briefing for 1800 hours. And Robert? Keep this as quiet as possible. The last thing we need is mass panic. With all due respect, Madam President, I think that ship has sailed. The Mobile Incident. Chapter 5. The Gathering of Scientists. Dr. Mary Foster was in her lab at MIT, analyzing protein structures, when her phone rang. She almost didn't answer. She was in the middle of a delicate procedure and hated interruptions. But the caller ID showed a Washington, D.C. area code, and something made her pick up. Dr. Foster? This is Robert Chen, Chief of Staff to President Hartman. The President would like to speak with you. Mary nearly dropped her pipette. I'm sorry, what? Please hold for the President. There was a click, and then a woman's voice came on the line. Dr. Foster, this is Elizabeth Hartman. Thank you for taking my call. Mary sat down heavily in her desk chair. Madam President. What can I do for you? I need your expertise. Have you been following the news out of Mobile, Alabama? The thing in the bay? Yes, I've seen the reports. What you've seen on the news is just the beginning. Dr. Foster, we've discovered what appears to be an extraterrestrial spacecraft buried in Mobile Bay. It's been there for centuries, possibly millennia. And we need the best scientific minds in the world to help us understand what it is and what it means. Mary's scientific training kicked in, overriding her shock. What evidence do you have that it's extraterrestrial? The composition of the hull material doesn't match anything in our periodic table. The design is unlike any human engineering. And there are symbols on the exterior that don't correspond to any known language or writing system. Have you opened it? Not yet. That's where you come in. We're assembling a team of scientists to investigate the object. Your work in xenobiology and astrobiology makes you uniquely qualified. Will you help us? Mary's mind was racing. If this was real, if there was actually an alien spacecraft in Mobile Bay, it would be the most significant discovery in human history. Every question she'd ever asked about life in the universe could potentially be answered. When do you need me? A military transport will pick you up at Logan Airport in 3 hours. Pack for an extended stay. And Dr. Foster? This is classified at the highest level. You cannot discuss this with anyone. I understand, Madam President. Thank you, Dr. Foster. Your country, and possibly your species, is counting on you. The line went dead. Mary sat in her lab, staring at her phone, trying to process what had just happened. Then she stood up, grabbed her coat, and started making a mental list of equipment she'd need. She had a spacecraft to investigate. Dr. Joe Taylor was giving a lecture on theoretical physics at Caltech when his phone buzzed. He ignored it. He was in the middle of explaining the implications of quantum entanglement to a room full of undergraduates who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. It buzzed again. And again. Excuse me, he said to the class, pulling out his phone. 17 missed calls, all from the same Washington, D.C. number. His phone rang again. This time he answered. Dr. Taylor? Please hold for the President of the United States. Joe's first thought was that this was a prank. His second thought, when President Hartman's voice came on the line, was that he was having a stroke. Dr. Taylor, I apologize for interrupting your lecture, but I need you in Washington immediately. We've made a discovery that requires your expertise in astrophysics and propulsion systems. What kind of discovery? The kind that changes everything. A car will pick you up in 30 minutes. Pack for at least a month. Madam President, I have classes to teach, research too. Dr. Taylor, we've found what appears to be an alien spacecraft. If you want to understand how it works, how it got here, and what it means for our understanding of physics, you need to be on that plane. Joe looked at his students, who were watching him with confused expressions. I'll be there. Over the next 6 hours, similar calls went out to scientists around the world. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a Japanese archaeologist specializing in ancient civilizations, was excavating a site in Kyoto when she got the call. Dr. James Okonkwo, a Nigerian engineer and expert in materials science, was in Lagos reviewing designs for a new bridge. Dr. Sarah Goldstein, an Israeli linguist who cracked several ancient languages, was in Jerusalem teaching a seminar. Dr. Raj Patel, an Indian geneticist studying human evolution, was in Mumbai analyzing DNA samples. Dr. Elena Volkov, a Russian physicist specializing in nuclear energy, was in Moscow consulting on a new reactor design. All of them received the same call. All of them were told the same thing: pack your bags, tell no one, and prepare for the most important work of your life. By 1800 hours Eastern Time, they were all on military transports heading to Washington, D.C. The Mobile Incident. Chapter 6. Gathering in Washington, D.C. Dr. Mary Foster was in her lab at MIT, analyzing protein structures, when her phone rang. She almost didn't answer. She was in the middle of a delicate procedure and hated interruptions. But the caller ID showed a Washington, D.C. area code, and something made her pick up. Dr. Foster? This is Robert Chen, Chief of Staff to President Hartman. The President would like to speak with you. Mary nearly dropped her pipette. I'm sorry, what? Please hold for the President. There was a click, and then a woman's voice came on the line. Dr. Foster, this is Elizabeth Hartman. Thank you for taking my call. Mary sat down heavily in her desk chair. Madam President. What can I do for you? I need your expertise. Have you been following the news out of Mobile, Alabama? The thing in the bay? Yes, I've seen the reports. What you've seen on the news is just the beginning. Dr. Foster, we've discovered what appears to be an extraterrestrial spacecraft buried in Mobile Bay. It's been there for centuries, possibly millennia. And we need the best scientific minds in the world to help us understand what it is and what it means. Mary's scientific training kicked in, overriding her shock. What evidence do you have that it's extraterrestrial? The composition of the hull material doesn't match anything in our periodic table. The design is unlike any human engineering. And there are symbols on the exterior that don't correspond to any known language or writing system. Have you opened it? Not yet. That's where you come in. We're assembling a team of scientists to investigate the object. Your work in xenobiology and astrobiology makes you uniquely qualified. Will you help us? Mary's mind was racing. If this was real, if there was actually an alien spacecraft in Mobile Bay, it would be the most significant discovery in human history. Every question she'd ever asked about life in the universe could potentially be answered. When do you need me? A military transport will pick you up at Logan Airport in 3 hours. Pack for an extended stay. And Dr. Foster? This is classified at the highest level. You cannot discuss this with anyone. I understand, Madam President. Thank you, Dr. Foster. Your country, and possibly your species, is counting on you. The line went dead. Mary sat in her lab, staring at her phone, trying to process what had just happened. Then she stood up, grabbed her coat, and started making a mental list of equipment she'd need. She had a spacecraft to investigate. Dr. Joe Taylor was giving a lecture on theoretical physics at Caltech when his phone buzzed. He ignored it. He was in the middle of explaining the implications of quantum entanglement to a room full of undergraduates who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. It buzzed again. And again. Excuse me, he said to the class, pulling out his phone. 17 missed calls, all from the same Washington, D.C. number. His phone rang again. This time he answered. Dr. Taylor? Please hold for the President of the United States. Joe's first thought was that this was a prank. His second thought, when President Hartman's voice came on the line, was that he was having a stroke. Dr. Taylor, I apologize for interrupting your lecture, but I need you in Washington immediately. We've made a discovery that requires your expertise in astrophysics and propulsion systems. What kind of discovery? The kind that changes everything. A car will pick you up in 30 minutes. Pack for at least a month. Madam President, I have classes to teach, research too. Dr. Taylor, we've found what appears to be an alien spacecraft. If you want to understand how it works, how it got here, and what it means for our understanding of physics, you need to be on that plane. Joe looked at his students, who were watching him with confused expressions. I'll be there. Over the next 6 hours, similar calls went out to scientists around the world. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a Japanese archaeologist specializing in ancient civilizations, was excavating a site in Kyoto when she got the call. Dr. James Okonkwo, a Nigerian engineer and expert in materials science, was in Lagos reviewing designs for a new bridge. Dr. Sarah Goldstein, an Israeli linguist who cracked several ancient languages, was in Jerusalem teaching a seminar. Dr. Raj Patel, an Indian geneticist studying human evolution, was in Mumbai analyzing DNA samples. Dr. Elena Volkov, a Russian physicist specializing in nuclear energy, was in Moscow consulting on a new reactor design. All of them received the same call. All of them were told the same thing: pack your bags, tell no one, and prepare for the most critical work of your life. By 1800 hours Eastern Time, they were all aboard military transports bound for Washington, D.C. The Mobile Incident. Chapter 8. The Meeting of the Minds. The C-17 Globemaster touched down at Berkeley Airplex at 0900 hours, taxiing past the massive Airbus facility where A220 and A320 aircraft were being assembled. Mary pressed her face to the window, watching as they approached a section of the airfield that had been cordoned off with military vehicles and temporary fencing. "Welcome to Mobile," Joe said from the seat beside her. "I hear it's lovely this time of year. Have you been here before?" "Once, for a conference." "Good seafood. Friendly people. Probably less friendly now that we've turned their city into a military occupation zone." The plane came to a stop, and Colonel Webb boarded, his expression as hard as granite. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Berkeley Airplex. This facility will serve as your base of operations. We've converted Hangar 7 into a command center with laboratories, living quarters, and briefing rooms. Your equipment arrived this morning and is being set up as we speak." He led them off the plane and into a convoy of black SUVs. As they drove across the airfield, Mary could see the scale of the operation. Hundreds of military personnel. Dozens of vehicles. Helicopters coming and going in a constant stream. "This is bigger than I expected," Yuki Tanaka said from the seat behind her. "The president wants this done right," Webb replied. "That means overwhelming force and resources. Whatever's in that bay, we're going to be ready for it." Hangar 7 was enormous, large enough to house several commercial aircraft. But instead of planes, it was filled with scientific equipment, computer stations, and what looked like a small city of temporary structures. "Your quarters are on the second level," Webb said, pointing to a series of modular units that had been installed along the hangar's walls. "Labs are on the ground floor. Command center is in the back. You'll have access to satellite communications, supercomputing resources, and anything else you need. Just ask." "When do we go to the bay?" Mary asked. "Tomorrow morning. We're still setting up the access structure. In the meantime, I suggest you familiarize yourselves with the data we've collected and start planning your investigation." He left them standing in the middle of the hangar, looking around at their new home. "Well," said James Okonkwo, "I've worked in worse conditions." "Really?" asked Sarah Goldstein. "Where?" "Lagos during the rainy season. Trust me, this is luxury." They spent the rest of the day setting up their equipment and reviewing the data. Mary established her lab in a corner of the hangar, unpacking microscopes, DNA sequencers, and other tools of her trade. Joe set up nearby, his space filled with computers and physics equipment. "Neighbors," he said with a grin. "How convenient." "Don't get any ideas about borrowing my equipment," Mary replied, but she was smiling. As evening fell, the team gathered in the command center for their first official briefing. Colonel Webb stood at the front of the room, a large screen behind him showing a 3D model of the object in the bay. Based on our surveys, we've determined that the object is oriented with its bow pointing north and its stern pointing south. The entrance we discovered is on the port side, approximately midship. We're constructing an access structure that will allow you to enter the object safely. What kind of structure? Asked Raj Patel. A sealed tube extending from a surface platform down to the entrance. It'll be pressurized, climate-controlled, and equipped with airlocks. We're treating this like a deep-sea diving operation, even though we're only in 60 feet of water. Why the precautions? Asked Elena Volkov. Because we don't know what's inside. There could be biological hazards, radiation, structural instability. We're not taking any chances. The screen changed, showing the symbols on the door. Dr. Goldstein, any progress on the symbols? Sarah stood and walked to the screen. I've been analyzing them for the past 6 hours. They're definitely not a phonetic alphabet. Instead, they appear to be mathematical or geometric in nature. See these patterns? She traced her finger along a series of interlocking shapes. They repeat in specific sequences. I think they might be instructions. Instructions for what? Webb asked. For opening the door, possibly. Or they could be a warning. Or a greeting. I need more time to work it out. You've got 24 hours, Webb said. We're opening that door tomorrow night, with or without a translation. That night, Mary found herself unable to sleep again. She wandered down to the hangar floor, where a few technicians were still working, and found Joe at his computer station, staring at equations on multiple screens. Burning the midnight oil? She asked. He jumped, then laughed. Jesus, you scared me. Yeah, I'm trying to work out the physics of how that thing got here. If it's been buried for 1,000 years, it had to have crashed or landed with significant force. But there's no impact crater, no debris field. It's like it just appeared. Maybe it did. That's not how physics works. Maybe our physics is incomplete. Joe leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes. You know what keeps me up at night? The idea that everything I've spent my life studying might be wrong. That there are laws of physics we don't understand, technologies we can't imagine. It's exciting and terrifying in equal measure. Mary pulled up a chair and sat beside him. I know what you mean. I've spent my career studying the origins of life on Earth. But if that ship is what we think it is, it might mean life on Earth didn't originate here. It might mean we're all aliens. That's a cheerful thought. Isn't it? She looked at his screens. What are you working on? Propulsion theories. If that ship traveled between stars, it had to have some kind of faster-than-light drive. Which, according to everything we know, is impossible. Unless it's not. Unless it's not, he agreed. Want to help me figure it out? I thought you'd never ask. They worked together until dawn, bouncing ideas off each other, challenging assumptions, exploring possibilities. By the time the sun rose over Mobile Bay, they'd filled 3 white bars with equations and diagrams. And they'd grown closer in the process. The Mobile Incident. Chapter 9. Welcome to Mobile. The living quarters were eerily familiar. Mary and Joe walked through corridors lined with what could only be described as rooms, small spaces with raised platforms that might have been beds, storage areas, and what looked like personal effects still in place after centuries. This is so strange, Mary said, examining one of the rooms. It's alien, but it's also not. The layout, the proportions, it's all designed for beings roughly our size and shape. Maybe that's not a coincidence, Joe suggested. They continued exploring, documenting everything with cameras and scanners. In one room, they found what appeared to be clothing, fabric that had somehow survived the centuries, still intact, still flexible. This shouldn't be possible, Mary said, running the fabric through her fingers. Organic materials decay. But this is perfect. Nothing about this ship follows the rules we know, Joe replied. He was examining a wall panel that had opened to reveal a storage compartment. Inside were objects that looked like tools, or maybe weapons, or maybe something else entirely. They moved to the next room, and Mary stopped in the doorway, her breath catching. "Joe! Look at this!" The room was different from the others. Larger. And on the walls were images, not photographs, but something like them. Holographic projections that showed scenes from another world. A blue sky. Purple vegetation. Structures that might have been cities. And beings, humanoid, but not quite human. Taller, with elongated features and skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. "Are these the crew?" Joe asked. "Maybe. Or maybe they're whoever built this ship." Mary moved closer to one of the images. "Look at their eyes. They're larger than ours, adapted for different light conditions. And their hands, 6 fingers instead of 5. But otherwise, they look remarkably human. Which raises the question, why? Why would aliens look so much like us?" They continued through the living quarters, finding more rooms, more evidence of the beings who had once inhabited this ship. And in every room, Mary felt a growing sense of connection, as if she were walking through the home of distant relatives rather than alien beings. "This is going to sound crazy," she said as they paused in a corridor, "but I feel like I know these people. Like I understand them." "It's not crazy," Joe replied. "I feel it too. There's something about this place that feels right. Like coming home." Their radios crackled. "Dr. Foster, Dr. Taylor, this is Colonel Webb. You need to get down here. Now." "What's wrong?" Mary asked. "Nothing's wrong. But we found something. Something big." They found Webb, Elena, and James in the large open area they'd identified earlier. But large didn't begin to describe it. The space was enormous, easily the size of an aircraft hangar, with a ceiling that soared 50 feet overhead. And it was filled with chambers. Hundreds of them, arranged in neat rows, each one roughly the size of a coffin. They were made of the same material as the ship's hull, but transparent, allowing them to see inside. And inside were people. "Oh my God," Mary whispered. They weren't moving. They appeared to be in some kind of suspended animation, their bodies perfectly preserved, their faces peaceful. And they were human, or at least, they looked human. Different ethnicities, different ages, but unmistakably human. "We've counted over 300 chambers," Webb said, his voice tight. "And they're all occupied." Mary approached the nearest chamber, her scientific training warring with her emotional response. The person inside was a woman, maybe 30 years old, with dark skin and features that suggested African ancestry. She was wearing simple clothing, and her hands were folded across her chest. "Are they alive?" Joe asked. "According to our instruments, yes," Elena replied. "There's minimal brain activity, minimal metabolic function, but they're alive. It's like they're in a deep coma. Or cryogenic suspension," James added. "The chambers are maintaining them somehow. Keeping them in stasis." Mary moved from chamber to chamber, studying the occupants. She saw Asian features, European features, features that suggested Middle Eastern or South American ancestry. It was like looking at a cross-section of humanity. "This doesn't make sense," she said. "If this ship has been here for 1,000 years or more, these people should be ancient. But they look modern. Contemporary." "Maybe they are," Yuki said quietly. She was standing in front of a chamber containing a young man with Japanese features. "Maybe this ship didn't come here 1,000 years ago. Maybe it came here much earlier. And maybe these people are the reason we're here." The implications of her words hung in the air. "You're saying this ship seeded Earth with humans?" Joe asked. "I'm saying it's a possibility we need to consider." Webb's radio crackled. "Colonel, this is Sergeant Martinez. We found something else. You need to come to the stern section." "Engineering." "On our way," Webb replied. He looked at the science team. Dr. Volkov, Dr. Okonkwo, you're with me. The rest of you, stay here. Document everything. And don't touch those chambers. As Webb and the others left, Mary stood among the chambers, feeling overwhelmed. If Yuki was right, if this ship had brought humans to Earth, then everything they knew about human evolution was wrong. This is going to change everything, she said softly. Joe put a hand on her shoulder. Yeah. It is. The Mobile Incident. Chapter 10. EP, Lowering the Spacecraft. The engineering section was a maze of corridors and chambers filled with technology that made even the bridge look primitive. Massive cylindrical structures rose from floor to ceiling, pulsing with a soft blue light. Conduits ran along the walls like veins, carrying energy to different parts of the ship. And in the center of it all was the engine. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure, a sphere of what looked like liquid metal, suspended in midair, rotating slowly. Energy crackled around it, visible to the naked eye, creating patterns that hurt to look at directly. That's an anti-gravity drive, Elena said, her voice filled with awe. It has to be. Look at how it's suspended. There's no physical support. It's generating its own gravitational field. How is that possible? Webb asked. I have no idea. But if we could understand how it works, we could revolutionize space travel. We could go anywhere in the universe. James was examining a panel near the engine. There's a separate power system here. Nuclear, I think, but not like any reactor I've ever seen. It's incredibly efficient. And it's still running. After 1,000 years? Webb asked skeptically. After 1,000 years. Maybe longer. This technology is so far beyond ours that it's like comparing a steam engine to a jet turbine. Sergeant Martinez appeared from a side corridor. Colonel, you need to see this. We found the crew. They followed him through a series of passages to what appeared to be a medical bay or morgue. And there, laid out on platforms, were the remains of the ship's crew. They were skeletons now, but even in death, their nature was clear. They were human, or close enough that the differences were minimal. Different bone structures in the skull. Slightly longer limbs. But unmistakably humanoid. How many? Webb asked. 37 that we found so far. All dead. Looks like they died at their stations, like they were trying to keep the ship running until the end. Elena knelt beside one of the skeletons, examining it carefully. Look at the bone density. These beings were adapted for lower gravity than Earth. They probably came from a planet with less mass. Or they spent most of their lives in space, James suggested. Webb's radio crackled again. This time it was Mary's voice, urgent and excited. Colonel, you need to get back here. Something's happening with the chambers. By the time Webb and the others returned to the chamber room, the entire science team was gathered there, along with several Marines. And the chambers were glowing. Not all of them, just a few dozen scattered throughout the room. The glow was soft at first, barely noticeable, but it was growing stronger. What's happening? Webb demanded. We don't know, Mary replied. It started about 5 minutes ago. The chambers just lit up. Is it dangerous? We don't know that either. But look, the people inside are moving. She was right. In the glowing chambers, the occupants were stirring. Fingers twitched. Eyelids fluttered. It was like watching someone wake from a deep sleep. They're coming out of stasis, Raj said, checking his instruments. Their metabolic rates are increasing. Brain activity is spiking. They're waking up. Can we stop it? Webb asked. I don't think so. And I'm not sure we should. These people have been in suspended animation for who knows how long. If we interfere, we might kill them. One of the chambers began to open, its transparent surface sliding away with a soft hiss. The woman inside, the one Mary had first noticed, with African features, gasped and sat up, coughing violently. Get the medical team in here. Webb shouted into his radio. Now! More chambers were opening. People were sitting up, coughing, gasping, their bodies struggling to adjust after centuries of stasis. Some fell to their hands and knees, vomiting. Others simply lay there, breathing heavily, their eyes wide with confusion and fear. The medical team rushed in, along with more Marines. It was chaos, people shouting, equipment beeping, the newly awakened crying out in languages no one understood. Mary knelt beside the African woman, who was now on her hands and knees, shaking. "It's okay," Mary said softly. "You're safe. We're here to help." The woman looked up at her, and Mary saw intelligence in her eyes, along with fear and confusion. She said something in a language Mary didn't recognize, her voice hoarse from disuse. "Sarah!" Mary called out. "I need you here." Sarah Goldstein rushed over, her tablet in hand. She activated a translation program and held it near the woman, who spoke again. The tablet beeped and displayed text. "Where am I? What happened? Where is the crew?" "We're on Earth," Mary said slowly, hoping the tablet would translate. "You're in Mobile Bay, Alabama. The ship crashed here a long time ago. The crew didn't survive." The woman's eyes filled with tears. She said something else, and the tablet translated, How long have we been asleep?" Mary looked at Sarah, who looked at Joe, who looked at Webb. No one wanted to answer that question. "We don't know exactly," Mary said finally. "But it's been a very long time." The woman closed her eyes, and tears ran down her cheeks. Around the room, similar scenes were playing out as more people woke from their long sleep, learning that they were the last survivors of a mission that had ended in tragedy. Over the next few hours, 37 people emerged from the chambers. The rest remained sealed, their occupants still in stasis. The medical team worked frantically to assess the newly awakened, checking vital signs, providing fluids, trying to help them adjust to consciousness after centuries of sleep. Mary stayed with the African woman, whose name, she learned through the translation program, was Amara. She was from a place called Kemet, which the program suggested might be ancient Egypt. She had been a teacher, selected for the mission because of her knowledge and her ability to adapt. What was the mission? Mary asked. Amara's answer, translated by the tablet, was stunning: to seed a new world with the children of the old worlds. To give humanity a second chance. I don't understand. What old worlds? The worlds that died. The worlds that were destroyed by war, by plague, by our own foolishness. We gathered the survivors, the best of us, the strongest, the wisest, and we brought them here. To Earth. To start again. Mary felt like the ground had shifted beneath her feet. You're saying humans didn't evolve on Earth? We came from somewhere else? Not somewhere else. Everywhere else. We came from 100 worlds, 1,000 worlds. All human. All dying. And this ship, the Ark of Stars, was our salvation. We were supposed to distribute the survivors across this planet, to different regions, to give them the best chance of survival. And then we were supposed to leave, to find other worlds, to continue the mission. But something went wrong. Amara nodded, fresh tears streaming down her face. The ship was damaged. We couldn't leave. The crew tried to repair it, but they were dying. The radiation from the engines, the stress of the journey, it was too much. So they put us in the chambers, hoping that someday, someone would find us. Someone would wake us. And now you have. Amara looked around the room at the other survivors, at the Marines and scientists and medical personnel. But this is not the world we left. This is not the Earth we came to seed. What happened? What went wrong? Mary didn't know how to answer that. How do you explain 1,000 years of history to someone who'd been asleep through all of it? How do you tell them that their mission had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams, that humanity had not only survived but thrived, but that the cost had been the loss of everything they'd known? It's a long story, Mary said finally. And we have time to tell it. But first, you need to rest. You need to recover. Amara nodded, exhaustion clear on her face. Will you stay with me? Of course. As the medical team helped Amara to a cot, Mary looked around the room. Joe was helping another survivor, a young Asian man who looked terrified. Yuki was speaking softly to an elderly woman with European features. Raj was examining a child, a girl, maybe 10 years old, who clung to him like a lifeline. They were all human. All survivors of worlds that no longer existed. All proof that humanity's story was far more complex and far more incredible than anyone had imagined. And somewhere in the back of Mary's mind, a question formed: if humans came from other worlds, what happened to those worlds? And more importantly, what destroyed them? The Mobile Incident. Chapter 11. Revelation. The news of the awakened survivors spread through the command center like wildfire. Within hours, President Hartman was on a secure video call, her face filling the screen in the briefing room. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, she said, her voice carefully controlled. We have 37 people who claim to be from other planets. They say they were brought here over 1,000 years ago to seed Earth with humanity. And they've been in suspended animation this entire time. That's correct, Madam President, Colonel Webb confirmed. And we believe them? The evidence supports their story, Mary said, stepping forward. We've analyzed their DNA. It's human, but with variations we've never seen before. Different haplogroups, different genetic markers. It's like they're from parallel evolutionary paths that developed independently on different worlds. How is that possible? We don't know. But the implications are staggering. It suggests that human evolution isn't unique to Earth. That somehow, somewhere, the conditions for human development occurred on multiple planets across the universe. Or, Joe added, it suggests that humans were deliberately spread across the universe by an even older civilization. That we're all part of some cosmic experiment that's been running for millions of years. President Hartman was silent for a long moment. That's a hell of a thing to drop on humanity, Dr. Taylor. Yes, ma'am. But it gets worse. How could it possibly get worse? Joe glanced at Mary, who nodded. Because according to Amara and the other survivors, every single one of their home worlds was dying. That's why they were chosen for the seeding mission. They were supposed to establish humanity here on Earth and then return to help evacuate their planets. But something went wrong. The ship crashed. The crew died. And they've been asleep for over 1,000 years while their worlds. He trailed off. While their worlds died, the president finished quietly. We don't know that for certain, Mary interjected. But the probability is high. Jesus Christ. President Hartman rubbed her temples. All right. Keep this contained. I need time to figure out how to tell the world that human history is a lie and we're all refugees from dead planets. With respect, Madam President, Colonel Webb said, containment is becoming increasingly difficult. We have local reporters sniffing around, and social media is exploding with speculation. Handle it, Colonel. I'll be in touch. The screen went dark. Webb turned to the assembled team. You heard the president. Tight lid on this. Nobody talks to the press. Nobody posts on social media. Nobody even thinks too loud. Understood? Everyone nodded, but Mary caught Joe's eye. They both knew that secrets this big had a way of getting out. The Mobile Incident. Chapter 13. The Aquariums. Mary found Joe in the mess hall at 3 a.m., staring at a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. Can't sleep either, she asked, sliding into the seat across from him. Every time I close my eyes, I see those chambers. Those people waking up after 1,000 years, asking where they are, asking if the mission succeeded. He looked up at her. How do you tell someone that they're the last survivors of a dead world? You tell them the truth. And then you help them figure out what comes next. Mary reached across the table and took his hand. We're scientists, Joe. We deal in facts, in evidence. But we're also human. We deal in hope. Hope, he repeated. What hope is there? Their worlds are gone. Everyone they knew is dead. They're stranded on a planet that's already overcrowded, already struggling with its own problems. The hope is that they're alive. That humanity survived, even if it wasn't in the way they planned. That's something. Jo squeezed her hand. When did you become an optimist? About 5 minutes ago. I'm trying it on for size. She smiled, and despite everything, he smiled back. You know what the crazy thing is? He said. I'm sitting here holding hands with a brilliant archaeologist while discussing the fact that human history is a lie, and all I can think about is how much I want to kiss you. Mary felt her cheeks flush. That is crazy. Is it though? I mean, if the world's about to learn that we're all aliens, maybe we should stop worrying about professional boundaries and just live a little. Dr. Taylor, are you suggesting we engage in inappropriate workplace behavior? Dr. Foster, I absolutely am. She leaned across the table and kissed him. It was brief, sweet, and completely unprofessional. When they pulled apart, they were both grinning like idiots. Well, Mary said, that was. Dr. Foster. Dr. Taylor. Sarah Chin burst into the mess hall, her eyes wide with excitement. You need to come see this. Now. They followed her through the corridors of the access structure and back onto the ship. Sarah led them deeper into the vessel, past the living quarters and the cryo-chamber room, into a section they hadn't fully explored yet. We've been mapping the ship's layout, Sarah explained as they walked. And we found something. A massive chamber in the aft section, below the engineering deck. What kind of chamber? Jo asked. See for yourself. She opened a door, and they stepped into a room that took Mary's breath away. It was enormous, easily the size of an aircraft hangar. And lining the walls were 10 massive aquariums, each one at least 50 feet long and 20 feet high. But these weren't ordinary aquariums. They were filled with ice. Oh my God, Mary whispered, walking toward the nearest one. Through the crystalline ice, she could see shapes. Animals. Fish. Creatures she'd never seen before. It's a biological archive, Sarah said, her voice filled with awe. They brought specimens from their worlds. Flora and fauna. A genetic library. Jo moved to another tank, pressing his hand against the cold glass. Inside, frozen in perfect stasis, was something that looked like a cross between a deer and a large cat, with iridescent fur and 6 legs. How is this possible? He asked. The ship's been down here for over 1,000 years. The main power failed. These should have thawed and decomposed centuries ago. That's the beautiful part, Sarah said, leading them to a control panel on the wall. The ship has a backup power system. Nuclear. It's been running this entire time, maintaining these chambers at exactly the right temperature. The main systems failed, but this was designed to last forever. Mary moved from tank to tank, cataloging what she saw. Fish with bioluminescent scales. Birds with 4 wings. Plants with geometric patterns that seemed mathematically impossible. And in the largest tank, something that made her stop cold. It looked almost human. Almost. But the proportions were wrong, the features too sharp, the limbs too long. What is that? She breathed. We don't know, Sarah admitted. But according to the ship's database, which Elena is still trying to translate, these tanks contain specimens from all 12 worlds in the seeding mission. 12 worlds, Jo repeated. But we only have 37 survivors. The ship was supposed to carry thousands, Sarah said quietly. Representatives from each world, along with genetic samples, cultural artifacts, everything needed to establish a new civilization. But something went wrong during the journey. Most of the cryochambers failed. The crew died trying to fix it. And the ship crashed here, in what would become Mobile Bay. Mary felt tears prick her eyes. They were trying to save their worlds. To preserve something of what they were. And they succeeded, Sarah said. These specimens are perfectly preserved. With modern cloning technology, we could potentially bring these species back. Recreate ecosystems from dead worlds. That's... Joe trailed off, shaking his head. That's beyond anything I ever imagined. There's more, Sarah said. The nuclear power system isn't just powering these tanks. It's powering something else. Something big. Elena thinks it might be a communications array. Communications? Mary asked. Communicating with what? That's what we need to find out. The Mobile Incident. Chapter 14. The Seeds. The next morning, the entire science team gathered in the frozen specimen room. Amara and several other survivors joined them, their faces a mixture of wonder and grief as they looked at the creatures from their lost worlds. This is a Kelmar, Amara said, pointing to the six-legged creature Joe had noticed earlier. They were sacred on my world. We believed they could see the future. She touched the glass gently. I never thought I'd see one again. A man named Darius, tall and dark-skinned with silver hair, stood before a tank containing what looked like a massive serpent with wings. The sky serpents of Thaler. We used to tell stories about them to children. They were supposed to be guardians of the sky. His voice broke. My daughter loved those stories. The room fell silent. The weight of what had been lost, entire worlds, entire civilizations, pressed down on everyone. We can bring them back, Mary said softly. Not your worlds. Not your people. But these creatures. We have the technology now. We could clone them, study them, preserve them. Why? Asked a young woman named Kira, her eyes red from crying. What's the point? They'll just be curiosities. Zoo animals. They won't have their natural habitats. They won't have their place in the ecosystem. Because they deserve to exist, Joe said firmly. Because they're part of the universe's heritage. And because maybe, someday, we'll figure out how to give them a proper home again. Yuki Tanaka had been quietly examining the control panels. Dr. Chen, you said the nuclear power system is also running a communications array? That's what the data suggests. Has anyone tried to access it? Sarah and Elena exchanged glances. We've been focused on the specimens. But you're right. We should check. They moved to a secondary control room adjacent to the specimen chamber. Elena pulled up the ship's systems on a holographic display that flickered to life at her touch. Okay, this is interesting, she muttered, her fingers flying over the controls. The communications array has been active this entire time. It's been sending out a signal. What kind of signal? Colonel Webb asked, suddenly alert. It's a beacon. Automated. Repeating every 12 hours. Elena pulled up the data. It's been broadcasting for, oh God, for over 1,000 years. Broadcasting what? Mary asked. Coordinates. The ship's location. And a distress call. The room went dead silent. A distress call, Joe repeated slowly. To who? Amara's face had gone pale. To the fleet. What fleet? The main fleet. The one that was supposed to follow us. We were the first wave, the scouts, the advance team. We were supposed to find suitable worlds and send back coordinates. Then the main fleet would come with the rest of our people. But that was over 1,000 years ago, Webb said. Surely they would have given up by now. You don't understand, Amara said, her voice shaking. The fleet was carrying millions of people. Everyone who could be saved from our dying worlds. They were traveling in deep cryosleep, moving slowly to conserve power. The journey was supposed to take centuries. They might just now be receiving our signal. Mary felt her blood run cold. Elena, can you tell if anyone has responded to the beacon? Elena's fingers danced over the controls. She pulled up logs, data streams, signal analyses. And then she stopped, her face going white. Oh no! What? Webb demanded. What is it? There's a response. It came in 3 days ago. She looked up at them, her eyes wide with fear. Someone answered the beacon. The Mobile Incident. Chapter 15. The Signal. The emergency meeting was called immediately. President Hartman appeared on screen within minutes, flanked by the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Director of National Intelligence. "Tell me this is a joke," the President said. "I wish it was, Madam President," Colonel Webb replied. "But the data is clear. 3 days ago, the ship's communications array received a response to its distress beacon. Someone, or something, is out there, and they know we're here. Can we determine where the signal came from?" Elena stepped forward. "Based on the signal delay and trajectory, we believe it originated from somewhere beyond the orbit of Mars. But the signal was brief and encrypted. We're still trying to decode it." "Beyond Mars," the President repeated. "So we're talking about something in our solar system?" "Yes, ma'am." "Have we detected any unusual objects? Any spacecraft?" The Director of National Intelligence spoke up. "Madam President, I've just been informed by NASA that they've detected several anomalous readings near the Moon. They initially dismissed them as sensor glitches, but in light of this new information." "Show me." The screen split, showing grainy telescope images of the Moon. And there, just visible in the shadow of the lunar far side, were shapes. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. "Dear God," someone whispered. The shapes were ships. Massive ships, each one dwarfing the vessel in Mobile Bay. They hung in space like a fleet of silent sentinels, waiting. "How long have they been there?" the President asked, her voice tight. "We're not sure. The readings started appearing 48 hours ago, but they could have been there longer, hidden behind the Moon." "Are they hostile?" "We don't know. They haven't made any aggressive moves. They're just waiting." Amara stepped forward, her face a mixture of hope and terror. "May I speak, Madam President?" "Who are you?" "My name is Amara. I was the navigator on the seeding ship. That fleet, if it's who I think it is, those are my people. All of our people." She gestured to the other survivors. "The ones we left behind. The ones we were supposed to save." "And are they friendly?" "They were when we left. But that was over 1,000 years ago. I don't know what they've become. I don't know what they've been through." Amara's voice cracked. "I don't know if they'll forgive us for failing." The President was silent for a long moment. "Colonel Webb, I want every available asset focused on those ships. I want to know their capabilities, their intentions, everything. And I want options for contact." "Yes, ma'am. Dr. Foster, Dr. Taylor, I need you to work with the survivors. Find out everything you can about that fleet. Who they are, what they want, how we should approach them." "Understood, Madam President," Mary said. "And someone get me the Secretary General of the UN on the line. If we're about to make first contact with an alien fleet, the whole world needs to know." The screen went dark. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Joe let out a long breath. "Well, this just got a lot more complicated." "You think?" Sarah said, her voice slightly hysterical. "We've got a fleet of alien ships hiding behind the Moon, and we have no idea if they're here to rescue us or destroy us." "They're not aliens," Amara said quietly. "They're human. Just like you. Just like me. They're refugees from dying worlds, looking for a new home." "A new home that's already occupied," Webb pointed out. "By 7 billion people who have no idea any of this is happening." "Then maybe it's time they found out," Mary said. The Mobile Incident. Chapter 16. The Announcement. Jennifer Martinez was in the Channel 10 newsroom when every phone started ringing at once. Tom looked up from his desk, his eyes wide. "Turn on CNN," someone shouted. Jennifer grabbed the remote and switched the TV to CNN. The anchor's face was pale, her voice shaking slightly as she read from a teleprompter. "Extraordinary announcement from the White House. President Hartman will address the nation in 1 hour regarding what officials are calling a matter of global significance. Sources tell CNN this is related to the ongoing military operation in Mobile, Alabama, though details remain scarce. We're also receiving reports of unusual activity detected near the moon, with NASA scheduling an emergency press conference for later this evening. Holy shit, Tom breathed. They're going to announce it. Announce what? Jennifer asked, though she already knew. Everything. The ship. The survivors. All of it. Jennifer's phone buzzed. Another message from Specialist Chen, they're going public. Get ready. This is going to change everything. She looked at Tom. We need to get to Mobile. Now. Way ahead of you. Tom was already grabbing his keys. I've got a camera crew meeting us there. If the world's about to learn that we're not alone in the universe, I want Channel 10 to be there when it happens. They raced out of the newsroom and into Tom's ancient Buick. As they drove toward Mobile, Jennifer's phone kept buzzing with messages from sources, tips, rumors. The dam was breaking. The secret was getting out. By the time they reached the perimeter fence around the bay site, there were already dozens of other reporters there, along with hundreds of civilians. The military had set up barricades, but people were pressing against them, demanding answers. Jennifer pushed her way to the front, her press credentials held high. A young Marine, not Amy Chen, but someone else, checked her ID and waved her through. You're lucky, he said. They're about to shut down all media access. Why? Because in about 30 minutes, the president is going to tell the world that we found a spaceship full of aliens in Mobile Bay, and then all hell is going to break loose. Jennifer felt a chill run down her spine. They're really doing it. Yeah. God help us all. She and Tom set up their camera with a view of the bay, where the massive access structure rose from the water like a steel tower. In the distance, she could see helicopters circling, military vessels patrolling, and the glow of lights from inside the structure. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a video file from Amy Chen. Jennifer opened it, and her breath caught. The video showed the interior of the ship. The cryo chambers. The awakened survivors. And then, most incredibly, the room full of frozen specimens, creatures from other worlds, preserved in ice. Tom, she whispered. You need to see this. He looked at the video, his face going pale. Jesus Christ. This is real. This is all real. We need to broadcast this. Are you insane? They'll arrest us. They're about to tell the world anyway. We're just getting ahead of the story. Jennifer looked at him. This is what we do, Tom. We tell the truth. No matter what. Tom was silent for a moment, then nodded. All right. Let's do it. But if we end up in federal prison, I'm blaming you. Deal. They went live on Channel 10's website, streaming the video and Jennifer's commentary. Within minutes, it had been picked up by social media. Within 10 minutes, it had gone viral. Within 15 minutes, the White House press secretary was calling for their arrest. But by then, it was too late. The truth was out. The Mobile Incident. Chapter 17. Unbelievable. Jennifer Martinez was in the Channel 10 newsroom when every phone started ringing at once. Tom looked up from his desk, his eyes wide. Turn on CNN, someone shouted. Jennifer grabbed the remote and switched the TV to CNN. The anchor's face was pale, her voice shaking slightly as she read from a teleprompter. Extraordinary announcement from the White House. President Hartman will address the nation in 1 hour regarding what officials are calling a matter of global significance. Sources tell CNN this is related to the ongoing military operation in Mobile, Alabama, though details remain scarce. We're also receiving reports of unusual activity detected near the moon, with NASA scheduling an emergency press conference for later this evening. Holy shit, Tom breathed. They're going to announce it. Announce what? Jennifer asked, though she already knew. Everything. The ship. The survivors. All of it. Jennifer's phone buzzed. Another message from Specialist Chen, they're going public. Get ready. This is going to change everything. She looked at Tom. We need to get to Mobile. Now. Way ahead of you. Tom was already grabbing his keys. I've got a camera crew meeting us there. If the world's about to learn that we're not alone in the universe, I want Channel 10 to be there when it happens. They raced out of the newsroom and into Tom's ancient Buick. As they drove toward Mobile, Jennifer's phone kept buzzing with messages from sources, tips, rumors. The dam was breaking. The secret was getting out. By the time they reached the perimeter fence around the bay site, there were already dozens of other reporters there, along with hundreds of civilians. The military had set up barricades, but people were pressing against them, demanding answers. Jennifer pushed her way to the front, her press credentials held high. A young Marine, not Amy Chen, but someone else, checked her ID and waved her through. You're lucky, he said. They're about to shut down all media access. Why? Because in about 30 minutes, the president is going to tell the world that we found a spaceship full of aliens in Mobile Bay, and then all hell is going to break loose. Jennifer felt a chill run down her spine. They're really doing it. Yeah. God help us all. She and Tom set up their camera with a view of the bay, where the massive access structure rose from the water like a steel tower. In the distance, she could see helicopters circling, military vessels patrolling, and the glow of lights from inside the structure. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a video file from Amy Chen. Jennifer opened it, and her breath caught. The video showed the interior of the ship. The cryo chambers. The awakened survivors. And then, most incredibly, the room full of frozen specimens, creatures from other worlds, preserved in ice. Tom, she whispered. You need to see this. He looked at the video, his face going pale. Jesus Christ. This is real. This is all real. We need to broadcast this. Are you insane? They'll arrest us. They're about to tell the world anyway. We're just getting ahead of the story. Jennifer looked at him. This is what we do, Tom. We tell the truth. No matter what. Tom was silent for a moment, then nodded. All right. Let's do it. But if we end up in federal prison, I'm blaming you. Deal. They went live on Channel 10's website, streaming the video and Jennifer's commentary. Within minutes, it had been picked up by social media. Within 10 minutes, it had gone viral. Within 15 minutes, the White House press secretary was calling for their arrest. But by then, it was too late. The truth was out. The Mobile Incident. Chapter 18. The Arrival. The world reacted exactly as expected, with chaos. Some people celebrated, seeing the arrival of the fleet as proof that humanity was part of a greater cosmic community. Others panicked, convinced that the ships were an invasion force. Religious leaders struggled to reconcile the news with their teachings. Scientists scrambled to understand the implications. And governments around the world mobilized their militaries, just in case. In Mobile, the bay site became the center of the universe. Reporters from every major news organization descended on the city. The military perimeter expanded to include most of downtown. And inside the access structure, the science team worked around the clock to prepare for contact with the fleet. Mary hadn't slept in 36 hours. She was running on coffee and adrenaline, coordinating with linguists, anthropologists, and diplomats to develop a communication protocol. Joe was equally exhausted, working with engineers to boost the ship's communications array so they could send a message to the fleet. We need to tell them what happened, Amara insisted during one of their planning sessions. They need to know that the mission failed, that most of us died, but that humanity survived here anyway. And we need to know what they want, Colonel Webb added. Are they looking for refuge? Are they planning to settle here? Because Earth is already at capacity. We can't just absorb millions of refugees from space. They're not refugees, Darius said sharply. There are people. Our families. The ones we left behind. That was 1,000 years ago, Webb countered. They're not the same people you knew. They've been traveling through space for generations. They could be completely different now. Or they could be desperate, Sarah said quietly. If their worlds were dying when the mission launched, and they've been traveling for 1,000 years, they might not have anywhere else to go. The room fell silent. We need to make contact, Mary said finally. We need to talk to them, understand their situation, and figure out if there's a way forward that works for everyone. Agreed, Webb said. Dr. Taylor, how soon can we boost the communications array? Give me 12 hours, Joe said. Maybe less if I skip sleep entirely. Don't skip sleep, Mary said firmly. You're no good to anyone if you collapse from exhaustion. Yes, Mom, Joe said with a tired smile. I'm serious, Joe. I know. That's why I love you. The words hung in the air. Joe's eyes widened as he realized what he'd said. Mary felt her heart skip a beat. You, what? Joe's face turned red. Did I say that out loud? You did, Sarah said helpfully. Very clearly. We all heard it. Thanks, Sarah. Super helpful. Mary felt a smile spreading across her face despite the exhaustion and stress. You love me? Apparently. Is that okay? It's more than okay, you idiot. She crossed the room and kissed him, not caring that they had an audience. When they pulled apart, everyone was grinning. Finally, Yuki said. The sexual tension was getting unbearable. We weren't that obvious, Joe protested. You really were, Elena said. It was painful to watch. Even Colonel Webb was smiling. All right, lovebirds. Save it for later. We've got work to do. The Mobile Incident. Chapter 19. The Communication. 12 hours later, the communications array was ready. The entire team gathered on the ship's bridge as Joe made the final adjustments. Okay, he said, stepping back from the controls. We're ready to transmit. Who wants to do the honors? Everyone looked at Amara. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, her hands shaking slightly as she placed them on the control panel. What do I say? She asked. The truth, Mary said. Tell them what happened. Tell them we're here. Amara nodded. She closed her eyes for a moment, gathering her thoughts, then began to speak. The ship's systems translated her words into the ancient language of the fleet, broadcasting them across the void. This is Navigator Amara of the seeding ship Horizon. If you're receiving this message, then you found us. You've come, just as we hoped you would. Our mission failed. The ship was damaged during the journey. Most of the crew died. Most of the colonists never woke. But some of us survived. 37 of us. And we've awakened to find that humanity thrived here without us. Earth is home to billions of humans now, humans who evolved here, who built civilizations here, who have no memory of the worlds we came from. We don't know what you've been through. We don't know what you need. But we're here. We're alive. And we want to help. Please respond. Please tell us what you need. We'll do everything we can to help you find a home. She released the controls and stepped back, tears streaming down her face. Darius put his arm around her shoulders. Now we wait, Joe said. They didn't have to wait long. 10 minutes later, the communications array lit up with an incoming signal. Elena quickly routed it to the bridge's speakers. The voice that came through was female, speaking in the same ancient language that the ship's systems translated in real time. Horizon, this is Fleet Commander Zara of the Exodus Fleet. We received your distress beacon. We've been searching for you for over 1,000 years. We're sorry it took so long. The journey was harder than we anticipated. We lost ships. We lost people. But we kept going because we had to believe you'd succeeded. That somewhere out there, humanity had found a new home. We're not here to invade. We're not here to conquer. We're here because we have nowhere else to go. Our worlds are gone. The fleet carries the last survivors, 3 million souls in cryosleep, waiting for a chance to live again. We know Earth is already inhabited. We've been monitoring your broadcasts. We know this will be complicated. But we're asking for your help. We're asking for a chance. Please. We've come so far. We've lost so much. Don't turn us away. The transmission ended. The bridge was silent. 3 million people, Webb said finally. Jesus Christ. We can't just turn them away, Mary said. They're refugees. They need help. And where exactly do you propose we put 3 million refugees? Webb asked. Earth is already struggling with overpopulation, climate change, resource depletion. We can't just. We'll figure it out, Joe interrupted. We're humans. We're good at figuring things out. We've survived ice ages and plagues and wars. We can survive this too. He's right, Amara said. And besides, they're not just refugees. They're engineers, scientists, farmers, artists. They have knowledge from 12 different worlds. They can help Earth as much as Earth helps them. If we can integrate them, Yuki added. If we can find a way to make this work without tearing our civilization apart. That's a big if, Webb said. It is, Mary agreed. But it's worth trying. Because if we turn them away, if we let 3 million people die in space when we have the resources to help them, what does that say about us? What does that say about humanity? Webb was silent for a long moment. Then he sighed. I need to call the president. The Mobile Incident. Chapter 20. Tell them what happened. The next 72 hours were a blur of negotiations, planning sessions, and increasingly frantic diplomatic meetings. President Hartman convened an emergency session of the United Nations. World leaders argued about quotas, resources, and sovereignty. Scientists debated the logistics of bringing 3 million people out of cryosleep and integrating them into Earth's population. And through it all, Mary and Joe worked with the survivors to maintain communication with the fleet, building trust and understanding. They're scared, Amara said during one of their briefings. Commander Zara tries to sound confident, but I can hear it in her voice. They're terrified that we'll reject them. We won't, Mary said firmly. We'll find a way. Will we? Joe asked quietly. I want to believe that, but I've seen the news. Half the world wants to welcome them. The other half wants to shoot them out of the sky. Then we need to give people a reason to welcome them, Mary said. We need to show them what we found on this ship. The frozen specimens. The technology. The knowledge. We need to show them that this isn't just about charity, it's about what we can learn from each other. She's right, Sarah said. The biological archive alone is worth. God, it's priceless. We're talking about ecosystems from 12 different worlds. The scientific value is incalculable. And the technology, Elena added. The anti-gravity drive, the cryosystems, the nuclear power generation. If we can reverse engineer even a fraction of it, we could solve half of Earth's problems. So we make the case, Joe said. We show the world what we stand to gain. And we hope it's enough, Mary finished. Jennifer Martinez stood outside the access structure, her camera crew filming as she delivered her report. This is Jennifer Martinez, reporting live from Mobile Bay, where history is being made. Behind me, scientists and diplomats are working around the clock to coordinate humanity's response to the Exodus fleet, 3 million refugees from dying worlds, seeking sanctuary on Earth. The debate has been fierce. Some argue that we have a moral obligation to help. Others worry about the strain on Earth's resources. But here in Mobile, where this incredible story began, there's a sense of hope. A sense that maybe, just maybe, we can rise to this challenge. I've spoken with some of the survivors from the horizon, the 37 people who've been asleep for over 1,000 years. They're not aliens. They're human, just like us. They have families, dreams, fears. And they're asking for a chance. The question now is, what kind of species are we? Are we the kind that turns away refugees in their darkest hour? Or are we the kind that opens our arms and says, "Welcome home"? Only time will tell. This is Jennifer Martinez, Channel 10 News. Tom gave her a thumbs up as they cut the feed. Good stuff, Jen. Really good. Thanks. She looked up at the structure, where lights blazed against the night sky. Do you think we'll do the right thing? I don't know, Tom admitted. But I think we'll try. And sometimes, that's enough. The Mobile Incident. Chapter 21. Building New Worlds. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Yuki Tanaka had been studying the ship's database, trying to understand the history of the 12 worlds. And buried in the data, she found something remarkable. They have maps, she announced during an emergency meeting. Detailed maps of habitable worlds. Planets they surveyed during their journey but didn't have the resources to settle. How many planets? President Hartman asked via video link. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Some are in our solar system Europa, Titan. Others are in nearby star systems. And according to the data, many of them could be terraformed with the right technology. Terraformed, the president repeated. You mean made habitable? Exactly. The fleet has the technology. They've been using it to maintain their ships for 1,000 years. If we combine their knowledge with our resources, we could create new homes. Not just for the refugees, but for humanity as a whole. The implications were staggering. Mary felt her mind racing with possibilities. We could expand, she said. Not just survive, but thrive. Humanity could become a multi-world species. It would take decades, Joe cautioned. Maybe centuries. But it's possible, Yuki insisted. And it gives us options. The refugees don't all have to settle on Earth. We could establish colonies on Mars, on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. We could spread out, reduce the strain on Earth's resources. And in the meantime? Webb asked. What do we do with 3 million people in cryosleep? We wake them gradually, Mary said. A few thousand at a time. We integrate them into our society, put them to work on the terraforming projects. They help us build new worlds, and in return, they get a home. President Hartman was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded. Present this plan to the UN. Let's see if we can get buy-in from the international community. The UN debate lasted for 3 days. But in the end, the vote was unanimous. Humanity would welcome the Exodus fleet. They would work together to terraform new worlds. They would become a species of explorers and pioneers. It wasn't perfect. There were still concerns about resources, about cultural integration, about the challenges ahead. But it was a start. And on a warm evening in Mobile Bay, as the sun set over the water, Mary and Joe stood on the deck of the access structure and watched as the first shuttle from the Exodus fleet descended from the sky. We did it, Mary whispered. We actually did it. We did, Joe agreed, pulling her close. Though I'm pretty sure the hard part is just beginning. Probably. But at least we'll face it together. Together, he repeated, and kissed her. Around them, the science team cheered. The survivors wept with joy. And in the distance, more shuttles began their descent, carrying the first of 3 million refugees home. The Mobile Incident. Chapter 22. Terraforming. 6 months later, the integration was well underway. The first wave of refugees had been awakened and were settling into communities around the world. The terraforming projects on Mars and Europa had begun, with teams of humans from Earth and the fleet working side by side. The frozen specimens from the biological archive had been carefully thawed and studied. Some had been cloned, with plans to establish preserves where these alien species could thrive. The technology from the horizon was being reverse engineered, promising breakthroughs in energy, medicine, and space travel. And in Mobile, the ship itself had become a museum, a testament to humanity's resilience and capacity for hope. Mary and Joe had been offered positions leading the Mars terraforming project. They'd accepted, of course. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. But first, they had one more thing to do. They stood on the beach at sunset, surrounded by friends and family. Amara was there, along with Darius, Kira, and the other survivors. Sarah, Elena, and Yuki stood as bridesmaids. Even Colonel Webb had shown up, looking uncomfortable in civilian clothes. Dearly beloved, the officiant began, and Mary felt tears prick her eyes. She looked at Joe, at the man who'd stood beside her through the most extraordinary months of her life. The man who'd held her hand when they discovered the ship, who'd kissed her in the mess hall at 3 a.m., who'd told her he loved her in front of everyone. "I do," she said when the time came. "I do," Joe echoed. And as they kissed, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. It was a new beginning. For them. For humanity. For the universe. Epilogue. Far above Earth, in the shadow of the moon, Commander Zara stood on the bridge of her flagship and watched the planet below. It was beautiful, blue and green and alive, so different from the dying world she'd left behind. "Commander," her second-in-office said, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth. They're asking about the rest of the fleet." "The rest of the fleet?" Zara frowned. "What do they mean?" "I don't know, ma'am. But they seem to think there are more ships." Zara felt a chill run down her spine. "Pull up long-range sensors. Scan the entire solar system." The sensors swept outward, past Mars, past Jupiter, past Saturn. And there, in the darkness beyond Neptune, they found them. Ships. Hundreds of them. Thousands. A fleet that dwarfed the Exodus fleet by orders of magnitude. "Oh no," Zara whispered. "Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission from the unknown fleet." "Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was cold, mechanical, utterly inhuman. "This is the Harvest Fleet. We have been tracking the Exodus fleet for 300 years. You have led us to a world rich with biological diversity. We thank you for your service. Harvesting will begin in 72 hours. Resistance is futile. Evacuation is impossible. Prepare for collection." The transmission ended. Zara stared at the screen, her blood running cold. They hadn't escaped their dying worlds. They'd been herded. Used as bait to find new worlds for something else to consume. And now, Earth, beautiful, vibrant, unsuspecting Earth, was next. "Get me President Hartman," she said, her voice shaking. "Get me everyone. We need to warn them." "Warn them about what, ma'am?" Zara looked at the massive fleet on the sensors, at the thousands of ships moving slowly but inexorably toward Earth. "That we didn't come alone," she said. "And that what's coming next is going to make first contact look like a picnic." On Earth, in Mobile Bay, Mary and Joe danced at their wedding reception, unaware of the darkness gathering at the edge of the solar system. Unaware that humanity's greatest challenge was yet to come. Unaware that the seeding of Earth had been just the beginning. And far above, hidden in the shadow of Neptune, the Harvest Fleet began to wake. The end. Or is it? I hope you like this story, and as you can see, Sylvester Scoforoo has left it open for a sequel. Be sure to like and subscribe to Sco's Media YouTube channel for more stories and songs.